Hi there. When solving hard SC questions, do you find it difficult to understand how faraway noun modification works? Or do you find it difficult to understand how a modifier can convert a unique noun into one of many, or vice versa? Or do you struggle to identify the modified entity of a verb ing or verb-ed noun modifier when it is followed by a phrase that contains multiple nouns? Well, if your answer to any of these questions is yes, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to another insightful video on GMAT sentence correction. And the topic for today is modifiers. Alright, here you have on your screen the question I was talking about. Now, please pause this video and give this question a fair attempt so that there are no spoilers along the way. Alright, assuming you solve this question, let's take a look at the statistics. As you can see, the correct answer is E. Only 32% managed to get this question correct. A whopping 34% settled for answer choice D, and almost a quarter for answer choice C. Of course, A and B are the least favorite incorrect choices. But what's abundantly clear is that the jury is split between answer choices C, D, and E. And if we look at these answer choices closely, what we see essentially is words jumbled up, rearranged in different positions to create different meanings. This means we need to apply our meaning-based approach extremely carefully in order to crack such questions. I'm going to leave you with a framework that you can apply not just to this question, but any other similar hard official question on modifiers. So sit up and take note. So let's start by reading the sentence. Much of the hope for continued improvement of the economy lies in the projection of increasing consumer spending this year. Interesting sentence. Let's start by, first of all, let me select all of this. And let me take this down here so that we have some space. All right. So I'm going to apply strategic pausing, and I'm going to take bits and pieces of the sentence piece by piece, and then I'm going to put them together to try to make sense of what's going on, right? So much of the hope, okay, we're talking about much of the hope. So let's take this segment and keep it here. Hope for what? Hope for continued improvement. Okay, let's give these bullet points. Okay, so I'm indenting for continued improvement a little to the right so that we know that it's a modifier of the preceding entity, much of the hope. Okay. For continued improvement of what? Of the economy. So another modifier here, nested. Lies in the projection. Lies. Okay, so we have the verb here finally, lies. And this is the verb for the subject. Let's mark the subject in blue, and then we also have the verb lies, so let's mark that in green. Okay, much of the hope lies somewhere, lies in the projection. Interesting. In the projection of increasing consumer spending. So this clearly is adding more information about projection. So this is a modifier here for projection. And then we have this here, another modifier, which seems to be telling us when the spending is going to increase, right? So for now, let's just put it over here. And we have all our bullet points with indentation. So this is what the sentence structure looks like, guys. I mean, it seems like a grammatically correct sentence. We have a subject and verb, so no subject-verb disagreement there or absence thereof, right? There is no, we don't see any errors of parallelism or comparison or any other such errors. Uh, Everything seems to be neat and tidy, no fragments here and there. So clearly, from a sentence structure perspective, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong. Or as we say, from a purely grammatical perspective, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong. This leaves us with modification, modifier analysis, and for that we must use meaning analysis. So this video lesson is all about giving you a framework of testing for modifier errors. Now, I would recommend going one step further, and I'm going to explain this on my next screen this way. Now, the first thing we're going to check for is logical predication. Now, if you're still unfamiliar with the term logical predication, then just last week we published a video explaining this concept, and if you haven't seen that as yet, then you will find the link at the top right corner of your screen. Do watch that. I'm sure you're going to benefit from that immensely. All right, so what is logical predication in a nutshell? Well, anytime we have a subject, we need to check whether the verb agrees with it logically or not. And not just subjects and verbs, this applies universally to any kind of modifier and modified entity pair as well, right? Any two things that belong together should be connected. If they do not belong together, they should not be connected, right? So long story short, let's get cracking. Much of the hope for continued improvement of the economy lies in the projection. Okay, so we know that the subject here is much of the hope, right? So I'm going to write a small s over here. And then we also know that this hope lies somewhere. So this is the verb, and it lies in something. It lies in the projection, and this is an object, right? So the hope lies in the projection as per the original sentence. Now, we are not here at a stage where we are trying to tell whether the original sentence is right or wrong. What we're trying to do right now is, first of all, figure out what is the logical predication or predicate of the subject much of the hope. All right, so let me write that down over here. I'm going to write down hope. Okay, and now we're going to look for the correct logical predication. Okay, so the hope lies somewhere or in something. So ask yourselves, where does it lie? What does it lie in? And you can definitely look at the rest of the sentence, the underlined portion, to see what our alternatives are. The first thing that I see is the noun projection. So let me write this down over here. So does the hope lie in the projection or increasing consumer spending? Okay, so there is this word or phrase, consumer spending. And then we have increasing consumer spending. Okay, so increasing, clearly something is increasing. So can we also consider increase, which is derived from increasing, as a contender? And then last but not least, we also have this year. So the question at hand is, which of these four is the logical predication of hope? 1, 2, 3, or 4? So this is where you put your thinking hats on. Come on, give this a good thought. Does the hope lie in the act of projecting something? Does the hope for continued improvement of the economy lie in consumer spending? Does it lie in an increase in consumer spending? Does it lie in this year? Okay, so right off the bat, I'm easily able to eliminate two of these. Which are those two? Well, clearly, the hope does not lie in this year, right? The hope lies in one of the preceding three. Okay, does it lie in the projection? The act of projecting something? Of course not. So it has to be either in consumer spending, right? much of the hope for continued improvement of the economy. What does this mean? This means that we have observed a certain trend in the economy, right? So the economy has been improving, right? So we see a trend here. And now a hope for the continued increase in this trend lies in something. What does it lie in? It lies in either consumer spending or an increase in consumer spending. So either which way, it is possible to create a logical idea out of these two alternatives. But we can straight away eliminate projection or this year. And this is where going to the answer choices or glancing at the answer choices can help speed up the process, because we can, disregard contenders that are not even present in the answer choices. For example, none of the answer choices starts with this year. So we have absolutely no reason to waste time with this. Okay, it was purely for the sake of a logical exercise. But as you can see, right off the bat, we have been able to eliminate answer choices A and B for starting with the word projection. Because according to A and B, much of the hope lies in the projection. Is it the projection or is it the thing that was projected? Again, let's not jump the gun. We're coming to that in a bit. But at least we know at this stage, the hope does not lie in the act of projecting, but in the thing that was projected. And that's where the money lies. Okay, so let's move forward now to modifier and modified entity analysis, right, which is slightly more niche. Now that we are left with three answer choices C, D, and E, let's first look at answer choice C. Right, slide down the modifier on the left and its respective or their respective modified entities on the right, and see whether they make logical sense or not. So the first modifier I see in choice C is projected. So the question is, what is projected modifying? Projected consumer spending increase. Now that's a mouthful, 4 words in a row. And the main noun here is increase. So the first question at hand is whether projected modifies increase, which most people who mark answer choice C actually believe it does, or does it modify something that comes in between? Do you notice that there is something in between here? So which of these two is the word projected modifying? And which of them actually make logical sense? Well, of course, the thing that is projected logically is the increase, because obviously you're projecting an increase in consumer spending, right? You're not projecting consumer spending, okay? But the way answer choice C has been worded by putting 4 words in quick succession, it becomes hard to determine whether projected modifies increase or it modifies consumer spending. Do you see this? We have a split or an ambiguity between A and B. This is the risk of placing, verb ing and verb-ed modifiers at the start of lengthy nouns. We already have spending, a verb ing word within that noun, and then we again put a verb-ed modifier at the start. So what this does is it causes it creates a phrase that is ambiguous. How? Well, let's simply apply brackets to understand this. I'm going to get this out of the way. So if you're still wondering how this makes sense or why this does not make sense, are we talking about a projected consumer spending increase, where this word modifies everything within brackets, wherein the main noun is increase? This is our case 1, which is written here on top. Or does projected modify consumer spending and then this whole thing modifies increase? In other words, is the increase projected, or is consumer spending projected, and then that projected consumer spending is the thing that's increasing and not any other consumer spending? You see how that works, right? Because of this ambiguity of modification, answer choice C is incorrect. there is an ambiguity of modification. All right, now let's go to answer choice D delta. Okay, so what is the modifier in D delta? Well, simple. That is projected to increase this year. So we have an entire clause. Let me write that down here quickly. That is projected to increase this year. Apologies for my marker. It's not working as it's supposed to. All right. Now, I know I'm taking a lot of time. I could just mark it on the right, but then I really want you to do this as a framework, mentally. Put it on one side, put the modified entry on the side, and make those connections, build those neural connections. Otherwise, if you do not do that, as a process, it will not, you will not get ingrained into your subconscious, right? You need to do this, right? So modified entity here clearly is consumer spending. If I mark this here, this is the modifier, and this is the modified entity. And mind you, there is an article the at the start, which I'm going to write down over here so that you're able to understand the entire phrase at one go. So much of the hope for continued improvement in the economy lies in the consumer spending that is projected to increase. Now, on the surface, this looks correct both logically and grammatically. Mind you guys, 34% have settled for this answer choice, right? Which is a very, very large percentage. So what is it that they miss? Where is it that they're faltering? Well, the answer is, what kind of information does this relative clause provide? Right, and you must have come across us using this term a lot, and even people using this across indiscriminately on forums. Essential versus non-essential modification. Well, this clause provides essential information by talking about a particular or specific consumer spending that is projected to increase. In other words, much of the hope for continued improvement of the economy lies in that consumer spending that is projected to increase, and not in the other consumer spending that is not projected to increase this year. By providing such information, by modifying consumer spending with such a clause, with a that clause or a which clause, without a comma in between, what happens is you are creating a class of multiple forms of consumer spending and talking about one of those in a class of many. Now think about it. Are there multiple types of consumer spending? Can we gather that from the context? Or is consumer spending just consumer spending? Clearly, it is the latter, right? There is just consumer spending, and whatever that consumer spending is, which is a concept, people spending, consumer spending on purchasing things, right? Products and services. So consumer spending is projected to increase, not a particular consumer spending is projected to increase. It is because of this distortion in meaning that answer choice D delta is incorrect. All right. Now, let's get to the last and final answer choice E, and let's see how different E is. So let me get this out of the way. All right, so is E any better? And if it is, why is it better? Okay, so we see increase in consumer spending that is projected for. Once again, we have the modifier. Okay, what does it modify? Okay, we have a phrase which has 4 words in it. So increase in consumer spending is a 4-word noun phrase that is being modified by this relative clause. But the question at hand is, which of these two nouns, N1 and N2, does the relative pronoun that refer to? Now, another advanced concept. Most of us, at least, the people that have not yet been sensitized to this information, believe in the touch rule of relative pronouns, that always modifies the noun immediately before it, which is why we have come up with an article on a concept called far-away-noun modification, right? And I have this, I'll show a glimpse of this article. It's in our blogs. I'm going to leave the link in the description, right? Go through this article, and if you want me to do a video on this, please feel free to leave your suggestions in the comments, and I'll definitely oblige. But it is not necessary that a relative pronoun always refer to the immediately preceding noun, right? And we have a case in point. For example, there is a possibility that a relative pronoun can jump over the immediately preceding noun to modify a slightly far away main noun in the preceding noun phrase. But this can only happen, right? The only caveat is that the modifier in between should modify that noun, should be part of that noun, right? Only then can that refer to increase, because technically this entire noun is the immediately preceding noun. And that's what we see on our hand. So but how do we figure out which of the two does that actually refer to? Well, that's where logic comes into action. Logically, which of the two is projected for this year? And I think it's abundantly clear through logical deduction that it is the increase that is projected for this year, and it is not consumer spending that's projected for this year. Why not consumer spending? Because consumer spending happens every year. It's not that there is only, for this year we're going to see consumer spending take place for the first time in the history of civilization, right? That doesn't make sense, right? Every year we find consumer spending. What is projected logically is an increase in consumer spending, which is typical of to this year, right? So on the basis of logical analysis, we can clearly understand that that is referring to increase, and the increase is what is projected. As you can see, all the modifiers and their modified entities make sense, right, with each other. We have in consumer spending modifying increase, makes sense. We have that is projected for this year, agreeing with increase, makes sense. And therefore, choice E was the best of the given choices, the least of all evils, right? Well, there you have it. I hope you understood this methodology, this framework. Let me leave you with today's takeaways. The first thing we observed today is the importance of not only sentence structure analysis, but also meaning analysis, right? These two things are two sides of the same coin. You cannot do one without the other. In fact, you should not do one without the other, right? But after that, we looked at a framework of cracking, modifier errors in official questions, and that is to create pairs between modifiers and modified entities, write them down side by side or visualize them side by side, check if they agree with each other logically or not, right? Only unless you painstakingly do this, you are not going to be able to see, the toughest, see through the toughest SC questions on modifiers. All right. Well, that's all I have for today, guys. Oh yes, almost forgot. I'm going to leave you with a challenge as always. And I found a really tough nut to crack. This is a hard official question. Don't get scared, right? Take, pause this video, use pen and paper if you have to, but really single out the modifiers and their modified entities and then check each pair painstakingly for logical correctness or logical consistency. If you find something amiss, then put a red flag. If you don't, keep it green. Use process of elimination till you find the answer choice that is the best of the lot. All right, guys. Well, there you have it. My name is Abhishek Raj. I'm a verbal expert here at e-GMAT. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe and share this video with your friends. And if there's any topic that you'd like me to cover in future videos, please don't hesitate to leave it in the comments. I'd be happy to oblige. Until then, happy learning.